If Edison had a needle to find in a haystack, he would proceed at once with the diligence of the bee to examine straw after straw until he found the object of his search. I was a sorry witness of such doings, knowing that a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of his labor. Nikola Tesla. I'm telling you, Doppler radar steers the storms. Doppler radar steers the storms. They're not supposed to leave the beams on that long. Yep, here we go. It's so predictable. It's almost boring, but it was hard to predict really which one they were going to bring it in, because it looked like they could have dragged it across to KLIX, because KLIX was feeding it, and so were some of the other ones, as we have shown. Look at that. I mean, that really just doesn't get any more like landfall into Doppler radar than like landfalling into KMOB. Just like that. Okay. Here we have KDGX, our third landfall in a row, going right into Doppler radar. This storm does not navigate except for where Doppler radar tells it to go. 3 for 3. Yet again. Gordon cataloged and documented. Oh, they're storm side. Bringing it in. They're bringing it in. Here we go, red facing the storm. Oh yeah, baby. Yep. Ah, wow, come on, you gotta admit. I mean, it's pretty freaking linked up, isn't it? And here she comes, and here she comes, and here she comes, right on the line. Oh my God, she's beautiful, isn't she? Man, these guys are good, man. 100 years they've kept this under wraps. Can you believe that shit? There's 100 years, my friends. Can't really. The eyes dancing in that line of the bright green polarities. Beauty. That's 2 for 2, buddies. And it went backwards to do it. Like, it was going up the coast, right? And then it's like went backwards. Well, if you had hijacked the hydrological cycle, wouldn't you want to make sure your boys were on the landscape of the climate change narrative, making sure no one got close to the real inconvenient facts? So, when did all this radar steering start? When was Doppler radar created, and when did it roll out? The Doppler radar rolled out in 3 phases. 1957 Doppler, then in 1974, and then finally the 1988 Doppler radar, aka NEXRAD, as in Next Generation Doppler Radar. If Edison had a needle to find in a haystack, he would proceed at once with the diligence of the bee to examine straw after straw until he found the object of his search. I was a sorry witness of such doings, knowing that a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of his labor. So I begin to look over the list of the United States hurricanes by state and to see if there was some sort of pattern I could make out. As that was a little bit overwhelming at first, and I did notice that after a certain time the hurricanes would start getting named. It's in the 50s, 56, 57. I noticed that it was right around the time that the 1957 Doppler radar rolled out. Now, could the technology have been around before 1957? Could there have been experimentation? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. We have category 5, category 3, 3, 3. Mostly 3s. Few 1s. It does seem overwhelming, but then I remembered that Dutch sense was originally talking about harp rings and tornadoes. Now, could those harp rings have been Doppler related? As we know now, there has been a lot of gatekeeping. So there were probably tornadoes involved with the early experimentation of directed energy weaponry. Now, these are all hunches, yes. This is intuition-based, yes. So let's see what history offers us up that matches our intuition or stops it and proves it to be foolishness. So here's a tornado timeline. There's one great notches tornado in 1840. These are historic world history projects. Historic tornadoes. There was the Mattoon tornado of 1917. And then the next one of note is in 1947. But it is sometime after the development of radar, which was developed in the 30s. So sometime between the development of radar and the naming of the storms, there could have been a lot more experimentation. I'm not sure. I cannot make that claim just yet. I'm keeping open so that I can see the landscape as it is. Because obviously we've been lied to. We've proven that. I mean, I want to go back and debunk that, but I haven't been able to. Because that's the fact. We've been lied to. So this has sprung up in our midst at some point in time. So, is it here? It is in 1957 Mid-South tornado outbreak. Warner Robin tornadoes. Glacier Higgins Woodward's tornadoes of 1947. Let's check out the Mattoon tornado of 1917. The funnel of the tornado, May 26, 1917, first appeared at noon, just west of a small town of southeast of Quincy. Wilson and Shagnon, 1971. It moved east along a remarkably straight line, creating damages in several small towns and many farms. The tornado then struck and badly damaged both Mattoon and Charleston. At one time, the series of tornadoes, which struck nearly a straight line from near the town of Louisiana, Missouri to near Mount Vernon, Indiana, was considered a single tornado, lasting 7 hours and 40 minutes over a 293-mile path through 3 states. This tornado held records for the longest tornado track as well as the longest lasting tornado. However, it is now generally accepted that this was family of at least 4, generally accepted, and possibly 8 or more separate tornadoes with either short breaks in the damage path or sections of straight line wind damage connecting the tornado paths. The most severe damage was in this, with sections of straight line wind damage connecting the tornado paths. The most severe damage was the cities of Mattoon and Charleston. There you have it. So, it moved east along a remarkably straight line. It moved east along a remarkably straight line. Well, this is very striking, isn't it? Okay, pretty much in that, right? That's right. This map is in the right relationship to this map, right? So this was the straight line over here, right? Well, so this is a straight line in Indiana, right? It was slightly curved upwards. Now let's look at where, here's where it starts to get interesting. I just Googled Tesla, and 1917, Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower destroyed. Tesla timeline. There it goes. Wardenclyffe Tower demolished on July 4th, 1917. And when was the Mattoon tornado? May 26th. Just enough time to realize how bad of a devastation there was in May, June, July, to have then brought down the tower. Well, look, that's a lot of theorizing, Raphael. It's a lot of theorizing, though, isn't it? The Wardenclyffe Tower, the Mattoon, Indiana and Illinois, right? Indiana and Illinois. Straight line that was going up just a little bit. Ha! Ha! How you like that for directed energy, huh? So I discovered that the Wardenclyffe Tower is shut down just a few months after the Mattoon tornado because I had some intuitive feeling about a straight line which happens to line up remarkably straight line. Remarkably straight line. Well, I wonder what else we can find. Realizing that our coincidences were starting to get interesting, I realized I had to go back even further with Tesla. Was this the first? When did this start? How far back does the story go? How much of the past has to be rewritten to fill in the overwhelming evidence today and to justify this world of gatekeeping? I decided to dive deeper into research, and what I discovered would be even more revealing and confirming that our weather has indeed been hacked, our hydrological cycle hijacked, and that we are most certainly in a world of hot water today. But instinct is something which transcends knowledge. We have undoubtedly certain fine fibers that enable us to perceive truths when logical deduction or any other willful effort of the brain is futile. Nikola Tesla. In June of 1884, America was graced with the arrival of a young Serb from Croatia in the Austrian Empire, the 22-year-old Nikola Tesla. He went to work immediately at Edison's Machine Works, helping build up that large utility in New York City. But after Edison reneged on a financial deal involving the development of arc lighting, Tesla figured he deserved better loyalty for his hard work and quit after only 6 months. It didn't take long, but by January 1885, Tesla founds his first company, the Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing Company in New York City, where he went back to work on patenting an arc lighting system. War of the Currents commences and would continue until 1912, when Tesla's alternating current would win out over Edison's direct current system. It wasn't until 1886 that the existence of electromagnetic waves was first proven conclusively by Heinrich Rudolf Hertz. 2 years later, in 1888, Tesla begins his research in the area of wireless telecommunications and alternating current power transmission. United States Patent Office approves his patent for an induction motor and a system for the production, transmission, and distribution of electrical energy. He secured a total of 36 patents, which allowed him to completely develop what was known as the Tesla polyphase system and created the basis for the Second Industrial Revolution, aka the Technological Revolution. By 1890, Tesla began his experiments with high-frequency currents. His first work on wireless power was demonstrated on November 2nd, when he demonstrated his plates connected to a powerful oscillator glow in the field between them. 1892. Tesla delivers his lecture Experiments with Alternate Currents of High Potential and High Frequency in London. He notices heat value in experiments converted out of mechanical energy. In my inventions, Tesla writes, "One day, as I was roaming the mountains, I sought shelter from an approaching storm. The sky became overhung with heavy clouds, but somehow the rain was delayed until, all of a sudden, there was a lightning flash, and a few moments after, a deluge. This observation set me thinking. It was manifest that the two phenomena were closely related as cause and effect, and a little reflection led me to the conclusion that the electrical energy involved in the precipitation of the water was inconsiderable, the function of the lightning being much like that of a sensitive trigger. Here was a stupendous possibility of achievement. If we could produce electric effects of the required quality, this whole planet and the conditions of existence on it could be transformed. The sun raises the water of the oceans, and winds drive it to distant regions where it remains in a state of most delicate balance. If it were in our power to upset it, when and wherever desired, this might life-sustaining stream could be at will controlled. We could irrigate arid deserts, create lakes and rivers, and provide motive power in unlimited amounts. This would be the most efficient way of harnessing the sun to the uses of man. The consummation depended on our ability to develop electric forces of the order of those in nature. It seemed a hopeless undertaking, but I made up my mind to try it, and immediately on my return to the United States in the summer of 1892, after a short visit to my friends in Watford, England, work was begun, which was to me all the more attractive because a means of the same kind was necessary for the successful transmission of energy without wires. At this time I made a further careful study of the Bible and discovered the key in Revelation. The first gratifying result was obtained in the spring of the succeeding year, when, reaching a tension of about 100 million volts, 100 million volts with my conical coil, which I figured was the voltage of a flash of lightning. Steady progress was made until the destruction of my laboratory by fire in 1895, as may be judged from the article by T.C. Martin which appeared in the April number of the Century magazine. This calamity set me back in many ways, and most of that year had to be devoted to planning and reconstruction. However, as soon as circumstances permitted, I returned to the task. Tesla's first announcement of a possible plan for wireless broadcasting was made in a lecture before the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia in February 1893. It would not require a great amount of energy to produce a disturbance perceptible at great distances, or even all over the surface of the globe. Quote, unquote. By May of 1893, Tesla was wowing the crowds at the Chicago World's Fair with alternate current right at the height of the War of the Currents. Already in the meeting of the National Electric Light Association on 1893, Tesla told, "Practical to disturb, by means of powerful machines, the electrostatic conditions of the Earth, and thus transmit intelligible signals and, perhaps, power." His overwhelming success with AC and his plans for wireless transmission of intelligence and power came as a deep thorn in Edison and Morgan's sides after they snubbed funding his wireless ideas a few years earlier. Meanwhile, experiments and discoveries in electromagnetic radiation and the propagation, manipulation, and detection thereof would yield to advances in wireless telegraphy, telephony, and radio wave signaling, and would fire up the synapses of imagination, innovation, and invention in minds all around the world. By the end of the 1890s, Tesla had come to the conclusion that it might be possible to transmit electrical power without wires at high altitudes, where the air is thinner, and, consequently, more conductive. And in 1899, Tesla would tell Morgan, "When wireless is fully applied, the Earth will be converted into a huge brain, capable of response in every one of its parts." In a patent US 645576 system of transmission of electrical energy, March 20th, 1900, Tesla claimed, it has become possible to transmit through even moderately rarefied strata of atmosphere electrical energy to practically any amount and to any distance. Tesla's Colorado experiments and patents explain artificial rain is created by ionizing the air with his tower. Various weird phenomena were noted in Tesla's Colorado Spring Lab experiments, such as a massive butterfly swirling above it during one such experiment. And in another experiment, Nikola Tesla became the first to scientifically document the artificial generation of fog by atmospheric ionization, later reporting at a presentation of the Edison Medal to Nikola Tesla. Minutes of the annual meeting of the American Institute of Electrical Engineers held at the Engineering Society's building in New York City years later on May 18, 1917. In Colorado, I succeeded one day in precipitating a dense fog. There was a mist outside, but when I turned on the current, the cloud in the laboratory became so dense that when the hand was held only a few inches from the face, it could not be seen. I am positive in my conviction that we can erect a plant of proper design in an arid region, work it according to certain observations and rules, and by its means draw from the ocean unlimited amounts of water for irrigation and power purposes. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this brings us back to the claims that yours truly is making. By 1900, Tesla had so electrified crowds at the World Expo, which he lit up at his Niagara Falls power plant, which started the electrification of the world using the Tesla induction polyphase system, winning the war of the currents against Edison's direct current with his alternating current system we use today, that the imagination of the world was set ablaze. More than one newspaper article called Tesla a wizard for his fantastical claims, and for some, this visionary side was awed at, and others used as an excuse to marginalize the inventor out of the mainstream circles. While Tesla was busy exploring the visionary use of not only intelligent wireless communications, but that of wireless power as well, using the Earth and its atmosphere as the medium, his experiments did not yield a practical, usable application of either radio or high-frequency waves, and so, later on, in December 23rd of 1900, the first audio-radio patent would get awarded to Guglielmo Marconi, who started work on it in 1894, and which, according to Tesla, rested on 17 Tesla patents that helped to develop his. This fact is disputed by historians, but in 1943, several months after Tesla's death, the courts would decide. In making their decision, the court noted, Marconi's reputation as the man who first achieved successful radio transmission rests on this original patent, which became reissue number 11, 1913, and which is not here in question. That reputation, however well-deserved, does not entitle him to a patent for every later improvement which he claims in the radio field. But why wasn't Tesla able to secure his patents earlier, at the onset of his discoveries? The answer is that while other investors were eager to capitalize on standardizing and commercializing their inventions for ready and practical applications, Tesla was busy dreaming big. Not just interested in the transmission of wireless signals, he was envisioning wireless power being released for multiple applications of far-reaching advances, including but not limited to weather control and energy transfer effected over long distances. One thing was for certain. Tesla's Colorado Springs lab were the only high-voltage, high-frequency electricity experiments in wireless power transmission of its kind at the time. And later that year, after making his final entry in his Colorado Springs journal on January 7, 1900, Tesla would be granted patents for a system of transmitting electrical energy and an electrical transmitter. By June 1900, the Century magazine published a sensational article written by Tesla, The Problem of Increasing Human Energy. In this interesting article, he described his detailed and futuristic vision and explained about some means of tapping the sun's energy with using an antenna, suggesting that it should be possible to control the weather with electrical energy. The greatest objective of such system would be to be able to control machines wirelessly, and war would no longer be possible. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful figure on Earth, read the article wrote by Tesla and quickly caught his attention, and then the inventor became a frequent guest in Morgan's home. He proposed the scheme to the inventor of the World Wireless System for communications to relay telephone messages instantly across the ocean to broadcast music, news, stock market reports, private messages, secure military, non-interferable communications. March 1901. As soon as the papers are signed on J.P. Morgan's secured loan, Tesla starts building Wardenclyffe with Westinghouse hired for the electrical designs. Morgan believes he is paying to build a transmitter to signal Europe with. Wireless Energy Patent 685957. Apparatus for the utilization of radiant energy issued. Other patents filed for and not to come for another 4 years. While Tesla was struggling with funding issues from a reticent J.P. Morgan and other unforeseen construction misfortunes, Marconi would beat Tesla to the punch of sending the first telecommunication signal across the transatlantic. While Tesla's tower was getting built between phases of funding to accommodate some of Tesla's loftier ideas, Marconi's device needed less power, resources, and money. And so on December 12th of 1901, the world awoke to the news that Marconi had signaled the letter S across the Atlantic from Cornwall, England, to Newfoundland. Tesla, undisturbed by Marconi's achievement, explained that the Italian inventor used at least 17 of his patents without permission to accomplish the first transmission. The equipment used by Marconi was a crude single-circuit transmitter, as opposed to Tesla's primary-secondary type, contained in a small building and operated by a heavy wooden lever. Although Marconi's achievement was great, Tesla was far ahead of him. Where Tesla was envisioning the transmission of voice, pictures, and power, and the creation of an unlimited number of wireless channels equivalent to today's cell phone technology, he achieved this by using multiple frequencies. Marconi could only send pulse signals on only a very small number of channels and admittedly had no understanding of selective tuning. Just prior to Marconi's telegraph crossing the Atlantic on September 6, 1901, President William McKinley gets assassinated visiting Tesla's AC system at Niagara. Conspiracies aside, it is interesting that it is while visiting Tesla's Niagara and consequent exhibit in Buffalo, New York, that the anarchist chose to snuff the president's light. Also of relevant note, that if McKinley got shot on September 6th and died September 14th, it must have been about the 11th of September of 1901 that things took a turn for the worst for the president, who helped launch the American century, which would not end until September 11th, 2001, 100 years later. His current mission that he was about to take on was to rein in the trusts. According to McKinley's secretary, George Cortilou, I never saw him more determined on anything than on a new degree of federal action against illegal monopolies and price fixing. Well, it seems like it was McKinley that was fixed instead. In 1903, a string of accidents would befall Wardenclyffe and Tesla would lose Morgan's funding, as well as others who followed suit. In an attempt to gain further funding so he could finish his research, Tesla would admit to Morgan that the bigger plan was not just to send radio signals across the Atlantic, but wireless power to any point on the Earth. Morgan declines his interest. My enemies have been so successful in representing me as a poet and a visionary that it is absolutely imperative for me to put out something commercial without delay. June 15th, 1903, the New York Sun wrote, people living near Tesla's laboratory at Long Island were the witnesses of multicolored lightning made by Tesla himself. The inflammation of the atmospheric layers at different altitudes and along New York, night suddenly turned to day. Air was full of luminescence. People radiated a mysterious shine or glow. They seemed to be ghosts. Thunder heard 25 miles away. Tesla broke, with multiple emotional and financial problems, stops development. His health collapsing and abandons the Wardenclyffe building. Allegedly. Morgan had already ruined Tesla financially by taking over the Westinghouse company and insisting that George Westinghouse stop paying royalties to Tesla. Tesla suffers a minor breakdown. 1907, March. French battleship Aina gets destroyed. Papers speculate by some sort of wireless energy blast. Speculation brings up Tesla's name, as many thought the explosion was caused by an electrical spark and the discussion was about the origin of the ignition. Lee De Forest, inventor of the Audion vacuum tube adopted by many radio broadcasters, pointed out that Nikola Tesla had experimented with a dirigible torpedo capable of delivering such destructive power to a ship through remote control. Tesla also claimed that the same technology used for remotely controlling vehicles also could project an electrical wave of sufficient intensity to cause a spark in a ship's magazine and explode it. New York Times, wireless caused Aina disaster? March 19, 1907, page 4, column 4. On March 19th, Tesla himself admitted this in a letter to the New York Times. Tesla further claimed that the spot at which the desired effect is to be produced can be calculated very closely, assuming the accepted terrestrial measurements to be correct. At that time, the explosion was blamed on saboteurs leading into the Spanish-American War of that year, before being later officially recognized as an ammunition explosion from within the ship. An event that would take place again just 4 years later on yet another French ship, the Liberté, which was moored in the harbor in Toulon, France, when it exploded on the 25th of September 1911. Liberty apparently suffering repeatedly on days tied to the numbers 9/11 by some strange synchronized fate, be it deliberate or accidental. But back to 1907, on May 4th, Tesla would renew his patent apparatus for transmitting electrical energy, originally applied for 5 years earlier in 1902. The stock market panic of 1907 and subsequent crash was said to be staged to destroy Tesla, Astor, Westinghouse, and Heinz. J.P. Morgan bails out the U.S. government, while he and Morse plan the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island, which would unconstitutionally finalize their coup against the sovereign American people, hurting them through fear, monopoly, and lies to separate themselves from being masters of their own purse, making them beholden to a private central bank instead. Westinghouse would succumb his large fortunes and fold after a conspiracy of bankers call in their loans on him, knowing the once mighty tycoon, who invested much of his own money in projects he believed in when other investors failed to invest in his vision, was spread thin at the time. Westinghouse loans get called in, bankrupting the once powerful giant. Yet his name would stay on acquired conquests as a symbol of the quality of industry he once helped forge. George Westinghouse, having once bought Tesla's patents for alternating current motors and generators in the 1880s, now was forced to turn down the inventor's power transmission business proposal. Workers gradually stopped coming to the Wardenclyffe laboratory when there are no funds to pay them. Tesla also gets subject to multiple lawsuits over unpaid Colorado Springs expenses at the time. In an article, Tesla comments on Peary's expedition to the North Pole and tells of Tesla's plans for energy transmission to any central point in the ground. In the period from 1900 to 1910, Tesla's creative thrust was to establish his plan for wireless transmission of energy. Undercut by Marconi's accomplishment, beset by financial problems, and spurned by the scientific establishment, Tesla was in a desperate situation by mid-decade. The strain became too great by 1906, 1907, and according to Tesla biographers, he suffered an emotional collapse. And in order to make a final effort in which his grand scheme may be recognized, he may have tried one high-power test of his transmitter to show off its destructive potential. This would have been in 1908. In 1907 and 1908, Tesla wrote about the destructive effects of his energy transmitter. His Wardenclyffe facility was much larger than the Colorado Springs device that destroyed the power station's generator. Later, in 1915, he would state bluntly, "It is perfectly practical to transmit electrical energy without wires and produce destructive effects at a distance. I have already constructed a wireless transmitter which makes this possible. But when unavoidable, it may be used to destroy property and life. The art is already so far developed that the great destructive effects can be produced at any point on the globe, defined beforehand with great accuracy." He seems to confess to such a test having taken place before 1915, and though the evidence is circumstantial, Tesla had the motive and the means to cause the Tunguska event. His transmitter could generate energy levels and frequencies capable of releasing the destructive force of 10 megatons or more of TNT. And the overlooked genius was desperate. The nature of the Tunguska event also is consistent with what would happen during the sudden release of wireless power. No fiery object was reported in the skies at the time by professional or amateur astronomers, as would be expected when a 200 million pound object enters the atmosphere at tens of thousands of miles an hour. Also, the first reporters from the town of Tomsk to reach the area judged the stories about a body falling from the sky was the result of the imagination of an impressionable people. He noted there was considerable noise coming from the explosion, but no stones fell. The absence of an impact crater can be explained by there having been no material body to impact. An explosion caused by broadcast power would not leave a crater. In contrast to the ice-comet collision theory, reports of upper atmosphere and magnetic disturbances coming from other parts of the world at the time of and just after the Tunguska event point to massive changes in the Earth's electrical condition. Baxter and Atkins cite in their study of the explosion, the fire came by that the Times of London editorialized about slight but plainly marked disturbances of magnets, which the writer, not knowing then of the explosion, associated with solar prominences. April 1908. Tesla wrote several letters to the New York Times in which he expanded on the potential of his invention as a death ray capable of destruction by direct application of electrical waves. As to projecting wave energy to any particular region of the globe, this can be done by my devices. The spot at which the desired effect is to be produced can be calculated very closely, assuming the accepted terrestrial measurements to be correct. He explained, "My invention requires a large plant, but once it is established, it will be possible to destroy anything, men or machines approaching within a radius of 200 miles. Just 2 months before Tunguska, he wrote tellingly, "This is not a dream. Even now, wireless power plants could be constructed by which any region of the globe might be rendered uninhabitable without subjecting the population of other parts to serious danger or inconvenience." Did Tesla, beset by financial problems and desperate for his Wardenclyffe plant to succeed, use it for precisely the purpose he described to the New York Times? June 30th. Tunguska event. At the time of the Tunguska blast, Admiral Robert Peary was camped out on Ellesmere Island in preparation for his bid to reach the pole. Tesla had made cryptic remarks about contacting Peary somehow, and had instructed him to watch the tundra for signals. What better way for Tesla to demonstrate the awesome power of his device to the world than to fire a bolt of energy toward Ellesmere and rip up some ice or cause a light show? Advocates of the theory that Tesla was behind the Tunguska blast claim his public stunt went drastically wrong, his concentrated wave of electricity overshooting its target and instead causing the explosion at Tunguska. Ground zero. News of full extent of Tunguska did not reach the rest of the world until 1927. Although the prevailing consensus as to the cause of the Tunguska blast and the explosion of a comet or meteorite in the atmosphere above the area, there are numerous reasons to doubt this. Several eyewitness reports describe unusual and prolonged lights in the sky, both before and for days after the impact, quite unlike those to be expected from a meteorite or comet. Even as far as England, the sky was lit up for days afterwards. Widespread reports of night turning into day flooded into the newspapers. One correspondent recounted how he was able to read a book illuminated purely by the night sky. Tesla specifically cited the ability of Wardenclyffe to light up the atmosphere on several occasions. "I have planned many details of a plant which would be amply sufficient to illuminate the entire ocean, so that such a disaster as that of the Titanic would not be repeated." Many of the eyewitnesses also described earth-shaking even before the explosion. Again, Tesla described how his device could shake the ground, even boasting on one occasion that he could shake the Empire State Building to its foundations. The meteorite theory is also undermined by the fact that no blast crater or trace of any meteorite had ever been found, despite exhaustive searches. At the time, Robert Peary was making a second attempt to reach the North Pole. On the evening of June 30th, accompanied by his associate George Scherf atop Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla aimed his death ray across the Atlantic towards the Arctic to a spot which he calculated was west of the Peary expedition. Tesla switched on the device. At first, it was hard to tell if it was even working. Its extremity emitted a dim light that was barely visible. Then an owl flew from its perch on the tower's pinnacle, soaring into the path of the beam. The bird disintegrated instantly. That concluded the test. Tesla watched the newspapers and sent telegrams to Peary in hopes of confirming the death ray's effectiveness. Nothing turned up. Tesla was ready to admit failure when news came of a strange event in Siberia. On June 30th, a massive explosion had devastated Tunguska, a remote area in the Siberian wilderness. 500,000 square acres of land had been instantly destroyed. Equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, the Tunguska incident is the most powerful explosion to have occurred in human history. Not even subsequent thermonuclear detonations have surpassed it. The explosion was audible from 620 miles away. Scientists believe it was caused by either a meteorite or a fragment of a comet, although no obvious impact site or mineral remnants of such an object were ever found. 60 miles from ground zero. I was sitting on the porch of the house at the trading station looking north. Suddenly in the north, the sky was split in two, and high above the forest, the whole northern part of the sky appeared, covered with fire. I felt a great heat, as if my shirt had caught fire. At that moment, there was a bang in the sky and a mighty crash. I was thrown 20 feet from the porch and lost consciousness for a moment. The crash was followed by a noise like stones falling from the sky or guns firing. The earth trembled. At the moment when the sky opened, a hot wind, as if from a cannon, blew past the huts from the north. It damaged the onion plants. Later we found that many panes in the window had been blown out, and the iron hasp in the barn door had been broken. 15 kilometers from ground zero. Early in the morning, when everyone was asleep in the tent, it was blown up in the air along with its occupants. Some lost consciousness. When they regained consciousness, they heard a great deal of noise and saw the forest burning around them, much of it devastated. The ground shook, and incredibly prolonged roaring was heard. Everything round about was shrouded in smoke and fog from burning, falling trees. Eventually the noise died away and the wind dropped, but the forest went on burning. Many reindeer rushed away and were lost. The very intelligent Russians soon put two and two together and approached Tesla on their own. Tesla approached the U.S. government first, but they did not want it. Later, he would offer it to the British government, but they were already aware of the military capabilities of electricity and had made use of radar during the war. When the grandiose plan of wireless power transmission was finally out of reach for Tesla, he wrote, "It is not a dream. It is a simple feat of scientific electrical engineering. Only expensive, blind, faint-hearted, doubting world. Humanity is not yet sufficiently advanced to be willingly led by the discoverer's keen, searching sense. But who knows? Perhaps it is better in this present world of ours that a revolutionary idea or invention, instead of being helped and patted, be hampered and ill-treated in its adolescence, by want of means, by selfish interest, pedantry, stupidity, and ignorance. That it be attacked and stifled, that it pass through bitter trials and tribulations, through the strife of commercial existence. So do we get our light. So all that was great in the past was ridiculed, condemned, combated, suppressed, only to emerge all the more powerfully, all the more triumphantly from the struggle. And here we are today. making the claim that directed energy technology is capable of moving power through the atmospheric medium, based not only on the direct evidence of the radar captures, which repeatedly prove this, but making reference to Tesla's work, suppressed for over a century, kept out of both the school history books and contemporary language. But was his directed energy work a secret no one knew about? Or are the discoveries Tesla made fully capitalized on and invested in today?
Essentially, we're drawing oceanic rain systems that exist over the oceans into geographic targets, into our agricultural areas. The technology uses electromagnetics, so we're not interfering with the atmosphere or with the environment. We're not damaging it. We're not using chemicals fired through rockets like other technologies use. We use a very gentle but powerful technology, launching electromagnetics into the atmosphere to modify the flow of the weather system over the ocean and drawing it into a target. So to try and keep it simple, we establish some kind of link with a weather system, and once we've seen through satellite meteorology that we have that link, we're able to draw that system in incrementally towards the target, such as in this case the Horn of Africa.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took it over from the Navy and managed it, and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there, and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere to be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed.
Mr. Yes. Fletcher, another question in an interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilized it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
questions. Yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the Senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thanks.
Get the word out. Once critical mass realizes the significance of water vapor in the climate change narrative, they will be better equipped to make sure the sustainability narrative and conversation doesn't fall right back into the hands of the same industry that got us into this world of hot water we're in today. Yeah, so I was told that this thing formed really close to shore. And that's just not what hurricanes do. And we know that. Oh, yeah. I bet you we're going to get some pretty stuff out of Houston Doppler radar. Okay, see, they got a wall right here. They're like not letting it come up this way. Everything's moving up this way, right? So this is probably this being fed in here. So They're doing this to you. Why are they doing this to you? They could stop this. They could put a wall of Doppler radar and stop this. Yeah, total feeding, total feeding. They're bringing it in. Look, it's right over Houston. There was no time to prepare. Boom. Boom, there's the radar. I mean, it's never like not on the fucking radar. Like they're doing it. I'm sorry. Excuse my freaking cursing French. I'm so upset. This is happening now. They're bringing it in. The green is open to the storm side. It means they're bringing it in. Oh, there's the red. So it's going to go... I don't know, where's the river? That's the river. It's going to go upriver. How to read Doppler radar. They keep talking about climate change and then they give examples that I've proven, or microwave radar, weaponized weather. I've proven weather is weaponized. I stand undebunked. I've been threatened. I've been insulted. I've been laughed at. I've been ignored. I've been shadow banned. I've been censored. I've been deleted. Been a lot of things, but I have not been debunked. I've been misquoted. I've been partially quoted and misguided. I've had my work misguided, presented in a way that misguides people to the significance of it. This is the key that ends the whole climate change BS and puts it back where it needs to be, in the hands of the people, not industry. Look at this storm. This is your climate change, folks. Hello. Hello.